So I'd like to present first by giving a short report to everyone here on the roles of elders in our congregation. This is going to be something that we want to keep in mind, not only for your awareness as covenant partners, but also in the future, if it's something that you might actually be able to step into as a covenant partner and serve our church in this way. So according to our bylaws at Midtown, and in accordance with the polity of ECO, Presbyterian, our denomination, elders, a board of elders, is responsible for the following things. One, maintaining records, so of covenant partners, baptisms, and so forth. Two, adopting and administering a budget, which we're going to go through in just a sec. They arrange for an annual independent financial report each year. They establish committees where relevant. So committees are groups of our board that function to help govern the church in a variety of ways, various levels of leadership. They are authorize and provide space for the proclamation of Scripture and the giving of the sacraments, which we just experienced a bit ago. And they also evaluate and improve the church's disciple-making ministry and mission. So that's kind of the role of the elders, what they're responsible for. Our current board, I'm going to shout some names out, consists of 5 members. One of them is Paige Vender. The other is David Itriade. The other is Jess Parker, right in the middle. Ooh, the biggest cheers. Ken Lufkin in the back. Oh, big Ken fan club here. And then Andrew Meeks right here as well. Nice. I just kept escalating. Sorry, Paige, I had you go first. If Paige went last. All right, Paige Vender is also one of our elders. There it is. Yeah. There we go. Here we go. So these people are all members of our congregation. That means covenant partners. So they have taken vows as members of our organization, and they have also stepped into this leadership role. Now, all except for Jess and Ken came into the leadership role before we were an official corporation and before our paperwork had gone through. So basically from now, what we're doing is setting a new rhythm for how elders are selected. So each year, we will have a nominating committee in our board. That means it would be a minimum of 2, maybe more, elders who are responsible for kind of getting to know our congregation and deciding, hey, who might be a good addition to this board? Who in their gifts might be a helpful addition to the board? So at some point, if you're a covenant partner, you might get approached and asked, like, hey, would you want to serve on our board in this way? Our bylaws indicate what that looks like. It's a term of 3 years, so long as you're around, right? It's not you don't sign it in blood. We don't do that. But you basically agree to saying, as long as I'm around for 3 years, I serve in this capacity, and you join the board. So that nominating committee is something that you actually, as covenant partners today, get to vote on. So we are going to propose, our board will pose a nominating committee option for you, and you all have the opportunity to provide dialogue, to give input, and also, if you'd like, to shoot that down or to vote it and approve it. So that's a nominating committee bit. There are also 4 corporate officers that our board as an organization is required to maintain. Those corporate officers are president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Those have distinct roles, which are indicated in our bylaws. And so you actually are going to have an opportunity today to vote and approve of those roles based upon our board members now. So basically what today is we are learning how to transition from being a church plant where we were technically under the board of another organization to now transitioning to our own board and learning what it looks like to function in that board. And that means we're naming some of these things. So we won't be voting on new elders today. Basically what we're doing is voting on a nominating committee for future elders, so people who will select future elders, and we'll be voting on the officers of our corporation, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. Make sense? Tracking with me? Any questions on that? I just wanted to give some context as to what's going on here, because this is pretty new for us at Midtown. Feel good? Okay, great. So what I would like to do at this point is move to our next part of our agenda and put a couple of these votes in front of us. So first, our nominating committee. Again, each year, our board will select a committee of 2 session members, elder members, that are tasked with considering, praying through, and inquiring about covenant partners within our congregation who might be helpful additions to our board. And they're also responsible for bringing those names forward to the congregation, who will then vote on and approve them. So today we're voting on the nominating committee itself. The board would like to put forward Jess Parker and Ken Lufkin as our nominating committee. Here's a Paige Vender, got it. Would like to put forward Jess Parker and Paige Vender. That's right, we have a different role for Ken. Jess Parker and Paige Vender as our nominating committee for this next year. Before we vote on that, though, I'd like to open that to the floor for discussion. Are there any questions about Jess or Paige, questions for them? They're going to be the ones who take the lead on future nominating conversations with covenant partners. So any questions from the floor on that proposition before we move to vote? great question. Who is going to be nominated as elders? So they have the ability to present in future meetings of the congregation who they think could be elders, and then as a congregation, we get to vote. So those of us that are covenant partners and have taken vows get to vote. So that's their process. Yep, totally. Other questions? Okay, well, I would like to motion to vote Jessica Parker and Paige Vender as our nominating committee for the next fiscal year. So from July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025. Do I have a second on that vote? Second. Any opposed? Awesome. Paige and Jess, now our nominating committee. Congratulations. That's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. In a situation where you as a covenant partner had real questions or concerns, that would be the time that you could bring those up. So discussion from the floor is the opportunity for you to ask questions. And again, like we mentioned today in the sermon, the hope is that that develops a creative tension for us, that we get to know each other better, that we put people in the right sorts of roles as an organization. So that's always welcome. We want to open the floor for that if needed. All right, so hearing no objections, Jess and Paige, congratulations, nominating committee. Second, we will need to vote on the changing of our corporate officers as we move into this new season as our own chartered organization. So corporate officers will serve the roles of president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Those are roles recognized in our bylaws and by the state of Arizona. So today, we are going to nominate these folks to fill each of those roles. Paige Vender, to remain, as she currently is, our board president. Ken Lufkin, this is where he comes in, to become our board vice president. Andrew Meeks to remain our board treasurer, and David Itriide to remain our board secretary. So those are the things that we're voting on corporate officer-wise. So I'd like to open that to the floor for discussion. Any questions or discussion on Paige as president, Ken as VP, Andrew as board treasurer, David as board secretary? Yeah, it is indicated in our bylaws. By and large, it doesn't function. It's really more for the state of Arizona than it is for the practical workings of each of our meetings. Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I would like. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, so that's what the nominating committee is for. So everyone has just voted to entrust the consideration and discernment of thinking of elders to Jess and Paige, and then they, through that trust, will now present to those board members, potential board members in the future, and that's when covenant partners can have insight. And so if Chris was like, heck no, I don't want that person to be an elder, then that would be the time you could bring it up, but they are responsible simply for the nominating committee. Now, sometimes that means that as elders, they might do some listening in their community groups and say, oh, you know what, this person could be a really good leader. Oh, Chris mentioned this person, I hadn't thought about that person, but the nominating committee is the one who's bringing those forth. Yeah. There can be, as in our polity, this is just kind of a detail, if, for instance, Jess and Paige bring forth a board member in the future, and Chris says, hey, I like those board members, also, I'd like to consider this person. You can actually amend bringing someone onto a board, and the motion can be amended so that someone, in addition, could be brought onto the board. So it's really still the covenant partners who make that choice, but that's available within our rules. So in that discussion portion, if there's somebody who would like to say, actually, I think there could be another good board member, you could bring that person up, it could get discussed, and the vote could be amended. Yeah. Cool. All right, so I would like to motion to make Paige Vender, our board president, remain in the role of board president. Ken Lufkin to fill the role of vice president. That will be a new role for him. Andrew Meeks to remain our board treasurer, and David Itriide to remain our board secretary. I'd like to move that we vote on that together. Do I hear a second? Second. Awesome. Any opposed? Great. Congratulations. That's the board officers. So, Daniel, you can go to the next slide that just had the agenda that we just went through. Daniel, you want to, oh, there we go. Nice. So this is basically what we went through just now. I'd like to leave some space open for any other discussions or questions on the business side of our meeting. So earlier this week, we sent out our bylaws and articles of incorporation, so maybe you have questions on some of those. You also, we're going to spend some time talking about our budget in just a sec, so if you have those questions, we'll address them in a bit. But any other discussion and questions before we move on from the business meeting? Yeah. Yes. Yes, yeah, you can still speak. Yeah. Great. Yep. Yep. Got my bylaws. Mhm. Sure. So the wording, the exact verbiage is on page 1. Covenant partners can serve as members of the board. Elect elders. Yep. Ah, got it. Okay. So, yeah, some clarity on that, I believe, and David could speak to this. The hope would be that, and maybe we reword it with a nominating committee as the one bringing forth the board, who is then chosen by the covenant partners. So that may be a language tweak that we'll need to make. So that's something we can choose to change, basically within our polity. So what we can do now is we can vote on new language that we would like to change that to as covenant partners. Tom has brought it forth. Tom's not able to vote. He's not a technical member, but our members can still vote on language change. So if we'd like to put forth a proposition to change the language in the bylaws to correct or to clarify that point, we can. So basically what we want to do now is update that language. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Sure. Is there. So it just needs to be clarified in that second portion. Yep, that makes sense. So what we'll do, if we don't have to bring it to the floor for a vote, what we'll do instead is update these bylaws and send out the updated ones to all the covenant partners. If you have more questions on them or clarifications, you can reach out. The board is the one who can adjust those bylaws. Yeah. I'm not sure if I understand the question. Yeah. Yes, correct. That is limited to the business corporation. Mm-hmm. Correct. Yep. No, that's good. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, any other questions, thoughts, discussion items in the business portion of the meeting before we move to vision items? Great. Guys, and just as a reminder too, some of this language can feel like, oh, this is really, really important from an organizational standpoint, that we have real clarity on these things for setting the church up in the long term. So thanks, Tom, for bringing those things up. Feel free, and we want you guys as covenant partners to take ownership of that as well. Hey, can we make sure that this is clarified well, updated well? So, all right, that concludes our meeting of the corporation. So I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting of the corporation. Do I hear a second? Awesome. All opposed? Great, thanks so much. All right, now we can move to a much more fun part of the meeting, or at least a less organizationally heavy part. Guys, we want to present on a few different things to keep you in the loop on what's been happening at Midtown and what's coming in the future. So Daniel, you can go ahead and click on to the next slide. I want to start our time because some of you in this room are pretty new to Midtown, maybe new covenant partners or people who are just kind of moving into this space for the first time. So I want to start by reminding us of our mission as a church and how we accomplish that mission. So I'm going to breeze through this real quick. This is just kind of our rudder for steering everything we do as a church. So our mission, we say this every Sunday, we exist to invite people into a transformative relationship with Jesus, and we do that in 3 different ways. We do that by being with Jesus, by belonging to community and by blessing the world. And being with Jesus includes things like scripture and prayer and disciplines and the rest. Belonging to community includes things like church, fellowship, and giving. And then blessing the world refers to things like service, mission in our neighborhood, vocation, and witnessing. Those are all parts of our Transformed Life app. So those of you that are in community groups have been through these things. But I just want to remind us of that our hope here at Midtown is to be invitational, not coercive, right? We're hoping to invite people into this way of following Jesus. We believe that it's transformative, which means it's all of life. It involves every part of our being shaped into the person of Jesus. And then finally, it's a relationship. It's not a rote religion that we follow. It is a person whom we follow. We become disciples of a person. So I just wanted to give you that language. If that's new to you, great, I'm glad. If that's old to you and you've been through Transformed Life, I think it's still helpful to remember that. So wanted to start us that way. Daniel, I believe we had a question slide as well. Is that next? Oh yeah, head back up to the question slide real quick. As we go through this, you guys can scan this QR code right now with your phone and submit questions as we go. So submit questions as we go and then we'll answer them at the end. So if you have a phone or you have questions, scan this QR code right now and you can enter them as we go through the rest of our presentation, in case you want to inquire of things. And that way we're not interrupting throughout. We can just kind of answer them all towards the end. So I'll give a couple minutes there for people to scan the QR code as they need. All right, I'm going to keep cruising. So, mission, right? Inviting people into a transformative relationship with Jesus by being with Jesus, belonging to community, blessing the world. Daniel, you can keep cruising. So what I want to do is give us updates in each part of our mission. So the being with Jesus, belonging to community, blessing the world. I'm going to give space for us to talk about each of those. First, on the being with Jesus. This is going to be updates on Sunday gatherings, spiritual practices, ways that we get shaped by Jesus. First, our hope in the new year is to add a couple new staff roles here at Midtown and expand some of the work we're doing in our ministry. Much of that is thanks to your giving, which has grown in the last year, and it gives us an increased ability to have some greater capacity to minister. So we're hoping to add an audio-visual coordinator in the next year. That person has already been selected and offered the role. His name is Jordan Hoyt. So Jordan Hoyt, our board has chosen to be our audio and visual coordinator. He will be doing all things AV on Sunday, building a team to help him do that. He'll also be thinking about how can we missionally engage, especially de-churched and unchurched folks. Those are the sorts of folks that our church has loved to reach and create space for. Folks who have had a tough time in the church, but maybe are interested in Jesus. Jordan's going to be working on some online formats for that to happen more comprehensively. So that's Jordan's new role. We also are creating a new role called the Director of Worship and Creative Expressions. So the idea behind this role, it originated in conversations with Stephen and I about how we integrate the arts into all the things that we do as a church, not just on Sunday mornings. And the reality that Stephen and I came to was that he did not have the time and capacity to do that in its fullness. He just didn't have the hours to commit with everything else he was doing, which was fine. We love Stephen. We're glad he's in our community. But he and I were also talking about, what would it look like to have somebody come in and fill this role? So we made a description of this role and have been putting it out for the last few months. And so basically this role, you'll see it on our budget as well. It's a 15-hour-a-week role. That's the expectation. And the Director of Worship and Creative Expressions is leading and developing a team for worship on Sundays, but is also leading all artistic movements in the church. So things like our Good Friday service, artistic outreaches. We live in an arts district here. We want to create space for healthy artistic engagement, missional thinking through music and the arts and so forth. And so we actually have someone doing a trial run of this role while Stephen is out. Her name is Annalise Erbst. So she is going to be doing, she's going to be doing a trial role of this run over the next few months, and she's going to kind of navigate if this makes sense for them in this season. And so it could be that Annalise takes on that role. Yeah, Jess has opinions on whether it makes sense. But yeah, over the next few months, you're going to see Annalise leading up here, leading teams, and potentially initiating some cool artistic outreach in spaces. So if you are an artist or you're interested in getting involved in the arts in some way at Midtown, Annalise is the person to connect with. So that's the Director of Worship and Creative Expressions. Today is Annalise's first Sunday in that role. And Jordan will be starting at the beginning of July. Yeah. Any questions on those new staff roles? Actually, I'm saving questions till the end. We're going to keep cruising. All right. Vision update. I said that. I did that, and then I forgot. Yeah. I'm just used to that. I'm used to asking for questions, comments, rebuttals, angry diatribes. Later. All right, vision update, friends. We, here at Midtown, our board has begun discussing the possibility of a new space to meet in on Sunday mornings. This has been prompted, just for some context, this has been prompted by, over the last 6 months to a year especially, we've been seeing this space get increasingly full on peak Sundays and peak events, to the point where people will come in and feel like there's not space. So this is just an interesting sociological thing. Most people, when they enter a room, don't feel comfortable if the room is below 50% full or above 80% full. People want a room that fits in that realm. And so this room, we figured out capacity-wise, can fit about 100 to 115 chairs, which means if the room gets to 80, 90, it feels over full for people. And we have been seeing that on certain baptism Sundays, on Easter Sundays, and so forth. In addition to that, we've also seen that the Kidtown spaces have proven to be a bit limiting in their capacity, along with the fact that after service, we don't have a lot of space for our kiddos. So you guys all see them sprinting up and down the hallways, right? And there's a parking lot and a street here. And so our board has been thinking about, well, maybe we need a new space that can make sense. So we've been exploring that idea, and that's kind of the update. We don't have a finalized picture of this, but we have been in conversations with a nonprofit just south of us called Aimright. Many of you have been to Aimright or served around Aimright. They are a nonprofit that works with at-risk youth in the Garfield neighborhood. They are basically a youth group without a church. We are basically a church without a youth group right now. So you can kind of see some of the missional connections there for us. This is the building here. They meet in an old church building. It was built in the 1920s. It needs some TLC, some tender loving care, but you've got some awesome space at this Aimright location. You've got a patio area here with tables. You've got grass field just on the other side of that. They sounded open to adding a playground potentially there for kiddos as well in the future. This is their sanctuary here. The sanctuary can fit 150 to 200 people, probably 200 depending on how we move chairs around. Really, really beautiful church. Like you can see the outside here. They've also got a basketball court. They've got increased parking capacity and larger kids' spaces in the building. So in many ways, it would meet a lot of our needs, and it would also still enable us to be missional in our neighborhood. It would still allow us to contribute to a nonprofit, right? So we're not buying a building, we're renting potentially from them. So we've been in conversations. This is not finalized yet. We may look into other spaces, but I wanted to give you guys an update on that, and also encourage you, if you want to drive by there and check out the space, if you wanted to see it, you can. It's not for sure Midtown's home. They have, again, some big improvements that they want to make, and our board has decided we're not moving in until some of these improvements would be made, and we can't afford to make those improvements at this point. But that's kind of where we're at. We're looking for new space. This is an exciting update, because what that means is that this space is growing, and more people are finding Midtown as a place that they can follow Jesus, and we want to continue to expand that work. Hope Women's Center has been an awesome space for us. We have never thought that Hope Women's Center would be where we're at for the next 50 years. The hope would be that we continue to develop and grow in this way. So just on the next slide, Daniel, I think I've got some quick bullet point reasons on why we find this important. First, we want to become more embedded in the neighborhood. One of the challenges of the Hope Women's Center space is that it's not super walkable for people in our neighborhood. McDowell is a very busy street. If you are coming from south, you need to cross at 16th Street. That's the only way to get here, and it's still a bit of a walk. So there's no easy way across this. It's a busy street. The space, like I mentioned before, has been a bit challenging for our Kidtown. So we want to be more accessible for our neighbors, especially our neighbors to our south here in the Garfield neighborhood. We also want to expand our indoor space. On Sundays, our capacity for service in Kidtown has become increasingly challenging, and spaces like Aimright could help solve that for us. We also want to expand space into other areas throughout the week. So this is another thing we've been chatting about. I actually don't office anywhere in like a building. I office at different spaces around Phoenix, but we want to allow ourselves, and then all of our groups meet, all of our activities meet at homes around the city, which means we don't often have a centralized location where we can do events. We can't host events here middle of the week. We can't host groups or prayer nights here in the middle of the week with Hope Women's Center. That's a limiting thing for us. In a new space, we could actually use the space throughout the week. We could have space to office, those sorts of things. And then finally, we want to increase our incarnational investment. So the cool thing about Aimright, it is right in the middle of a very walkable neighborhood. It is right across the street from an elementary school. That's Garfield Elementary, yeah. Garfield Elementary is right across the street there. Super walkable space. We already have a great relationship with Jeff, who is the CEO of Aimright Ministries. And we've had a ton of really great opportunities to partner with them already. We think it's a real great opportunity. So that's another reason we're wanting to pursue it. More incarnational investment. So that's why the move comes up. Again, feel free to submit questions. We'll address them at the end. All right, next up, next slide. When our hope is to clarify a timeline in the next 4 months. Clarify a timeline in the next 4 months of what it looks like. So that means we're looking at July, August, September, October. By the middle of the fall, our hope is to have some more clarity on timeline for moving, where we're moving, those possibilities, or if we're moving. We may do the evaluations and decide, you know what, Hope is kind of the place we're going to be for a little while. But we wanted to at least inform you that we are on the lookout for space. All right, next up. Okay, so a couple different notes on what this means budgetarily for us. A move is alongside a bunch of other ministry initiatives we're hoping to expand in this next year. So we're also hoping to increase our mission budget. You may have noticed this, but now that we are financially self-sustaining, we want to become a church that is radically generous and giving away of a good amount of our budget. So our board has decided that they are going to establish 10% at minimum of our budget is going to organizations outside our walls doing justice and mercy and mission work in the city. So that means that we are increasing our mission budget in this next year. We're also going to be covering a portion of the cost for our pastoral residency program. Many of you know Daniel Barth, our pastoral resident. Daniel, in the next couple of years, develops into a space where he can be a pastor, a planter, a revitalizer. We hope to keep that program going. So part of our budget will mean increasing our budgetary allotment for the pastoral residency program. Third, we're going to be adding the new staff roles I mentioned above. We're also going to be increasing a bit of pay for our current staff roles, both Liz and Kidtown. Our board also approved for the pastor head of staff to receive a pay increase. So those are two new additions. We're going to expand our continuing education budget. So that's another thing that's growing in this next year. And we're going to be increasing our Kidtown budget. Continuing education, by the way, is just training, sending people to our national gathering from our staff and elders, those sorts of folks, just continuing to develop them. So that's all exciting. That's a lot of stuff that we're hoping to do in the next year. It means that our board is requesting and putting in front of our covenant partners to meet this need by increasing our budget by about 20% over the next year, which means covenant partners are being asked to help meet those needs in the next year. That includes mission, that includes a new space, that includes these new staff roles. And I have another breakdown of what this would look like here on the next slide. Yeah, nice. So what this means for us, over the next year as covenant partners and people peripheral to Midtown who maybe aren't covenant partners but are interested in becoming one. First, we want you to pray. Pray for our board as we discern what is next for our church when it comes to mission, when it comes to space, what this next year looks like. We want to be open to the Spirit's guidance. We want to have strength and energy to make the right choices here and wisdom to make the right choices. The second thing that this means is increased but doable financial need. So I actually did the math. If we wanted to see that 20% increase, it would mean that if every covenant partner, so all people who currently call themselves covenant partners, if you increased your giving by $2 a day, we would immediately meet this need. So $2 a day is basically the ask that our board is giving to covenant partners. And that's not including folks who aren't covenant partners. If you're not a covenant partner, but you really love this church and want to be a part of it, that's kind of the idea. If we could all increase by $2 a day, we immediately hit this number. So that's kind of the ask in the next year. And then finally, growth in ministry team involvement. A move like this would mean that we have a lot of expanded opportunity for ministry. It also means that we need to show up and help do that. So one of the reasons that we would move space is that we want to continue to grow and develop and reach more people as a church. But that also means that on the front end, it's going to require people already part of the church to invest a little bit more deeply. So we would encourage you, and we're going to talk about it a bit later, especially with Kidtown, we would encourage you to think about reflecting on your gifts with that APEST we're going to send out this week, and then thinking about how is it that you could show up and help partner with Midtown using your gifts in the ministry we're doing. And maybe there's a new way you could do that. Maybe there's another way you could step in and do that. We want to be a church that is all of us working together, right? Not just a few staff people. So that's what these updates mean for us. Here's the ways that you can join. You can scan these items. If you aren't currently on our email chain for updates, you can scan that QR code. I'll bring this back up at the end so you guys can go. You can update giving there at the second QR code, and you can update ministry teams and join a ministry team in this third QR code and join us in the work we're doing. You can tell that Midtown loves their QR codes, right? All right, so that's kind of big picture, missional updates when it comes to move being with Jesus. Let's go on. Okay, next up, belonging to community. I'm going to cruise through these next couple. We have a new group structure that we are going to be starting in the fall. So many of you who have been around Midtown for a while, you know about our community groups. They are awesome groups. somewhere between, it's tough over the summer because groups take breaks, somewhere between 70 to 80% of covenant partners are in a community group. So it's been an awesome thing to see people investing in relationships and lives with one another. But what we found in those community groups is there is a bit of a ceiling to the level of depth that can be reached a lot of times. You've got 10 or 12 people. Discussion ends up being more, well, what are the takeaways? How are you processing the sermon on Sunday? How can we pray for you? How can we support you? Which is great. We want to keep those. But we also want to provide an opportunity for deeper discipleship in our community. What would it look like to have more intentional, smaller groups, like 3 to 4 people who walk with Jesus alongside one another? So there's a new group structure where we're going to have community groups as an entry opportunity, and then we're going to have these discipleship groups as a deeper opportunity in there. There will be 9-month intensive programs where you are with, at max, 3 other people and led into things like spiritual disciplines, creating a rule of life, thinking about mission and evangelism in your life, those sorts of things. And then we're also adding in covenant partnership cohorts at least twice a year. Covenant partnership means an opportunity to step in and become a member of Midtown and make certain faith commitments. We're going to roll those out at least twice a year. Our next one will be in August. So if you're not currently a covenant partner, but you'd like to explore the possibility of what it means to become one, August is when we're going to start that back up. All right, one thing, this is just an update for you on that group structure and the way it kind of goes. So this is what we call our discipleship pathway at Midtown. We want to be a church that reaches people wherever they are in their faith and provides space for them to follow Jesus wherever they are. We believe that that's the missional model that Jesus has given us. And so that means that we want to create space for people who are curious about following Jesus but are not currently following Jesus. We want to create space for people to get rooted in a community of Jesus followers and connect. We want to create space for people who are growing in their discipleship of Jesus, and we want to create space for people who are fruitful, who are giving away their lives for the sake of others, and they are pouring into those curious people. This is kind of what we've seen work for what the faith journey can look like, especially for de-churched, unchurched folks. So basically what we've done is we've created groups that fit into each one of those categories. So our skeptics cohort and other things like movie nights, other missional events, those are places we can direct folks who maybe aren't ready for church or maybe aren't ready to follow Jesus, but want a space to explore spirituality in general. Then, after going through something like that, if it deemed necessary, the C3 course, which is that covenant partner course that I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a 3-week-long preliminary entry into the faith that's designed for the de-churched, unchurched folks to work their way back into the faith. So that's kind of our second level. That would be kind of fitting into this rooted category. Next up, fitting into the growing category, are our community groups, which already exist, a place basically to build healthy relationships. It's primarily about building community and walking with one another and supporting one another well. They're not as intensive when it comes to spiritual disciplines or practice. And then in the fruitful point here, we have discipleship fellowships. That is a working name because it's a lot of ships in a name, discipleship fellowship. But the idea of that program is it's an intensive 9-month program of same-gendered, deep discipleship designed to cultivate thriving leaders. And so the idea here is that we've created a discipleship next step for everyone in our community to continue to invest so that there's no ceiling to go deeper with people in Midtown. Those discipleship fellowships will be starting in August. We're going to have more info on how you sign up for them. So if you're interested in one of those, stay tuned. But I wanted to put it in front of you. This is a thing we're really excited about. Over the course of 9 months, I mean, what could happen if we had these discipleship fellowships expanding into their neighborhoods, loving their neighbors radically, following Jesus radically? We could see some really awesome fruit, I think. So that's our new group structure. That's belonging to community in the next year. Finally, blessing the world. I mentioned this earlier, we're devoting 10% of our annual budget to go outside of Midtown. You'll see that reflected in the budget when we go through it. We're continuing our ABCD partnerships. ABCD is asset-based community development. That means connection with organizations that are already doing great work in our neighborhood. Next up, we're applying the skill mapping assessment to how we think about mission. So I'm actually in conversation with some of our nonprofit partners. From that skill map, who in here filled out the skill mapping assessment? You guys a few of you. So the idea of the skill mapping assessment was what skills exist in this community and how do we use them to love our neighbors well? I'm speaking with organizations like AimRight on using that skill mapping to think through how we keep showing up in their space and how we keep serving them. And then finally, we're going to continue in our monthly service opportunities, things like the mobile pantry with AimRight, things like family nights here at Hope Women's Center, and so forth. So that's updates on our missional endeavors. All right, I'm going to hand it over now to Andrew Meeks, who's going to present on our financial snapshot from 23-24. Master Meeks.
Thank you. All right, sweet. This is just our financial snapshot from our fiscal year of 2023 through 2024. So our fiscal year runs from July to June 30th. So most typically it's December or January to December, but ours just for summaries starts in July. So as of right now, our total actual revenue for this year was $126,896, which does not include June 2024 as of right now, since we don't get those financials until July. But that's right under our projected amount of $135,000 for the fiscal year 23 and 24. So based on our average income per month, we should be right over that $135,000 projection. So yeah, just thank you everyone for just your giving and generosity, because it just allows us just to, do kingdom work, to be able to, pay all the people that invest into our community. And then as you can see, our total actual expenses for this fiscal year, $107,444. So as you can see, revenue over expenses is always a great thing. So with that, we've been able to build a savings balance just to help out with, any particularly emergency funds, building like a benevolence funds and things like that. So average monthly revenue for this fiscal year was $11,536. And then our current cash assets on hand as of June 2024 is $55,026.11. Again, this is just a good way for us to be able to build things in like emergency funds, benevolence funds, further mission opportunities, with Daniel becoming a pastoral resident. So yeah, just really awesome snapshot for this fiscal year. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. So yeah, a lot of numbers here. So this is kind of the graph if you don't want to look at all these numbers. So essentially just breaking down our revenues per month based on our expenses per month. So kind of the snapshot of this is our average revenues per month was at $11,536, and then our average expenses $9,768 per month. So again, when we're having revenues over expenses, always a good thing. So total revenue $126,000, total expenses $107,000. And our average net income per month was right around $1,768. So on this graph right here, this pretty much just details the green line is our average revenue per month, and then the red is our average expenses. So as you can see, from July to January, pretty healthy income throughout that time. And then as you can see, from March to April, had a little bit of a dip in our revenue and an increase in expenses. So you can kind of see that right here in March and April, we had about $14,000 per month in expenses. That boils down to, one, becoming a corporation isn't cheap. So we had to do a lot of legal work essentially to get our corporation converted into a nonprofit. And then also it was Holy Week, so we had a lot of Good Friday events, a lot of investing into our kids' town. So that's why our expenses were a little bit higher. So that's why on the graph it looks a little bit worse. But as you can see in May, we're back up to the positive. But yeah, again, if you ever want a bigger breakdown of the budgets, where our expenses are coming from, where our revenues, yeah, you can always feel free to ask us, and we can provide that to you if needed. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. All right, sweet. So yeah, this is our fiscal year 2024 to 2025 breakdown. So this is essentially what we're going to be anticipating for July 2024 through June 2025. So as you can see, income right now would be $175,000, which would be that around 20% increase. And then as you can see, the residency is going to be all outside funding, so that's going to be $25,623, which is going to be right around a total of about $200,000 is kind of what we're expecting in income. And then expenses, it breaks down essentially all of the expenses we have. So anything from paying our rent here to salaries for our staff, for communication, things like that. So I'll go over here to this pie chart. So as you can see, the majority of our expenses are going into investing into our staff. So, with the addition of Daniel and Jordan and, our worship staff and Clint, Kid Town, Gabby also is the director of communication with us. That's where a lot of our income is going, just to invest in the people that are investing into us. And then as you can see, going back, we have 10.1% of our income going to mission, which is our goal for this fiscal year. And then our property is going to be essentially our rent payment to Hope at 12.8%. So again, another missional opportunity to partner with, whether we're renting from Hope Women's Center or whether we're renting from Aimright. Essentially, our rent is also helping to provide more funding for them, which is an awesome opportunity as well. And then administration costs 8.2. But yeah, again, I mean, it's a really healthy metric and function to have a majority of the money that is coming in going into the people investing into us, which is right around that 62%. And then also we just have our net equity. So between October 21st and April 2024, we essentially have $33,869 in equity, so essentially just retained earnings. And expected from July 24 to June 25, we're expecting a net income of right around $1,642, which would essentially be the contributions we're getting or our revenue coming in versus the expenses, which is all the money going out. So we're expecting about $1,600 from that. And then our net total equity after the estimated fiscal year of 24 through 25 would be right around $35,513. But yeah, that's just kind of a big visual and snapshot of what our budget will be look like coming forward to this next fiscal year. So, but yeah, I'll go ahead and give it back to Clint.
Liz is going to present first on some Kidtown updates. Daniel will present on residency things, and then we'll have space to talk about the questions you guys have submitted. So, Liz, come on forward.
Okay. It might be more than 7 minutes. There's a lot that I would love to say, and what matters here for today was hard to narrow down. So first, I see in here already, and I know that there's many others that are not here that that have taken the time and poured into our kids here and have given of their time once a month, twice a month, sometimes last minute to fill a need. And, you know, I feel like I can never appreciate all of them enough. So I'm very grateful for the support that we have had. It has been wonderful and reliable and very. They've just stepped in and really taken ownership over a lot of it. So I'm coming at this very grateful, and also there's more. So I would like I've been kind of going through a lot of what do I hope Kidtown would look like in 5 years, or whether I'm still in the role or somebody else is in this role. What would I love to kind of set up and see that this ministry could become? So I would like you guys to think about a time where maybe in your life you felt encouraged, discipled, or just grateful for somebody in your life that was older than you, standing alongside of you, a little bit further down the road, and just being on your team. They might have been in your life for a day, a week, a month. It could be a couple years. Maybe you're still in contact with them. And if you haven't had somebody like that, maybe think about what you would have benefited from an experience like that. Because I think the reality is, as we get older, we kind of forget what really mattered at times in us when we were younger. Or we maybe don't think it's as important. So I'd love for you guys to kind of keep that experience or that idea in mind as I continue to share. So this vision, I have kind of mashed together some language that I have been really drawn to the last couple months. And it's not like an official, this is the vision of Kidtown, but it's just kind of, this is where what really has stuck out to me right now, and kind of like the launching pad of what comes out of it. So, to raise up resilient disciples by painting a picture of Jesus that is so beautiful and compelling that they won't want to walk away from their faith. I recently heard somebody talk about kids' ministry of being less like Disney and more like Mr. Rogers, which I feel like is very timely given the recent sermon series on Won't You Be My Neighbor. And the idea of this, so like as I was thinking about that, I was like, I love that idea. And I think it's very simple to kind of put it that way. We do not operate on a Disney mindset where it's like program and excitement and fun and engaging and all this, bounce around to all these fun things, and then you leave. But what I've been coming across, and I've had experience in my own life, is so many of the resources available to kids ministry out there really draw in the programming, and they really, I don't want to say necessarily that it's like a trap, but it's like this road that you can go down of, oh, this curriculum is great, but then it includes all these other things that kind of keep the movement and keep the entertainment, more than focus on our own spiritual journey as children, as the kids are growing up. What kind of spiritual journey are they on? So I know, like, we are already more in line with the Mr. Rogers mindset of the simple, the practical, the neighborly, the intentional. But it has been very interesting to see how many children's ministry resources out there really emphasize high energy program. And it can be very expensive, just like Disney. So I would love to talk about why they matter, the they being the children, the younglings, why they matter, which many of you guys already know this. This is not news to you. But so why they matter and why investing in their faith earlier on matters. Thinking about it from our perspective as we show up to church every Sunday, every single child walking through this door is an opportunity to show them Jesus. It's a hello, it's a knowing their name, it's a high five, it's learning what they're interested in. Every opportunity. Clint, can you remind us the stats-ish on the whole de-churching and the amount of like pastors retiring and aging beyond pastoring and the ones coming up?
Yeah, they're very basically, and Daniel will present this a little bit of license. Fewer than 15% of pastors in the U.S. right now are under the age of 40. There is a need for ministers and lay leaders who can relate to and engage youth at an effective level. There's actually also another study I was reading about related to Midtown. There is a direct correlation between people who leave the church and leave faith as adults and whether or not they have a positive example outside of their home of what faith looked like. One positive example outside of the home of what faith looked like and what it looked like to follow Jesus is the primary factor in people retaining their faith as they get older. So that makes Midtown so essential. It's not just about getting through a Sunday, it's about helping give them a picture of what it's like to follow Jesus.
You heard it straight from Rev Lev. And that's exactly kind of why I'm here and why I'm in this role for right now. And there's a reality. So from the social media world, or the social science world, there's been so many studies and researches about how social science influences the young. And I learned recently, and it's like, yes, I know this, I see this, but hearing it is that media is trying to reach younger ages in order to form them and catch them earlier. So, yeah, I'm not even going to go into that. We see that. We experience that. We know some of those traps. We are more attuned to it, but there is an intentionality in trying to lock the younger generation into whatever it is that they want them to be pulled towards. I'm reading a book right now, and there's a couple quotes in it that I'm going to share from it, but here's one of them. It says, "Our life is full of opportunities to disciple our children. And whether or not we disciple them, they will be discipled. by billboards, by kids in the back of the school bus, and by a world that does not know Jesus and his love. And there's some studies that have also been done that have pointed to the fact that a worldview is formed by age 13. And this is kind of like a general idea of picturing the world and what they believe. And then, like as we know who have been 13 before, that kind of changes and it develops in different ways. But the basic of a worldview is formed by age 13. So I really want us to think about who or what are we allowing to disciple our kids? Is it going to be our culture? Is it going to be our faith? What do we want that to look like? So a few things that come along with that. This, I forgot to switch it. I'm going to talk about curriculum development. So this is pretty small right now. But the curriculum that we're using, which many of you don't even really know about, and that's okay. It's okay, and it works well. But it doesn't, as I'm finding, it doesn't quite meet our space needs well. And it doesn't necessarily line up with just the deeper truths that I would love for the kids to start learning from younger ages. Because as I was just talking about this morning, we don't need to give them a simplified version of a Bible verse to memorize for a month. They can memorize a Bible verse for a month. They are capable. They are smart enough to do that. So I've been looking into new curriculums, something that will meet our space needs better, our resources better, and kind of just gives them a stronger foundation, I feel like, for Sunday mornings. So that's something that those who are currently serving and who are parents can kind of be aware of. So a lot of you probably have noticed we have started incorporating our kids in the worship set of the morning. This, I feel like, is really, is just a very important experience for them to have as they get to experience worshiping alongside all the generations and what that looks like. So currently our kids program runs through 6th grade. I don't know that it has ever been actually communicated like that, but it's currently birth through 6th grade. And starting in 2025, I am looking to have quarterly outside gatherings for the youth that are in grades 6 and up. So it'll be a great way for those 6th graders who will be spending their last year in Kidtown to kind of build some relationships with the kids that are already out beyond Kidtown. And it kind of gives them a little bit more mature things to get to have and do and fun. So those are some just basic things that are coming for curriculum. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is our Midtown Dream Team, which is not the official name, but I just couldn't think of anything else. And you'll notice that it says Midtown. It does not say Kidtown. And that is because everybody in here and who's not in here today has a role to play. And it might not be serving in a classroom, though I would love that. But it takes all of us, really. We all have special gifts. We all have special skills and talents and things that our kids would just benefit so, so deeply from. So there's a few things that I want to cover. Like Clint said, it takes one loving adult to make a difference in a child's spiritual formation and attitude towards the church as they become teens and young adults. And that's outside of the home. So they need to be met on their level. They need to know that they matter, that they're seen, and that they're known. And that will draw them in to understanding a little bit more about how God sees them. On Sunday mornings, because that's kind of the primary where we're at right now of activities, just a reminder, as some people I've heard in the past, not here, but we are not here on Sunday mornings to babysit the children. We're just not. We are here to stand in the gap between what the world is trying to tell them, what they might be experiencing with their friends, with neighbors, or sometimes even within their own family. And so we're here to be safe people, trusted adults, to kind of walk with them through their journey of life. So as far as Sunday morning goes, I'll just be honest. We currently would operate really well with 6 volunteers a week. We have 3 classrooms. 2 adults in every classroom would be the minimum. We currently have 15 people that are committed to serving in Kidtown. And some of those only serve once a month, which is fine. And some of them do twice, which is great. But if you do the math, if we need 6 adults every Sunday, and we only have about 15 people, I'd love to see more people step in. On a broad scale, I would love to have a program that has 20 to 25 people committed to serving 2 to 4 times during a semester, which we'll talk about this semester. So that could be once a month, once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks. However that fits for your time, yes. I will say yes. Because you matter, your time matters, and also they would greatly benefit from every one of you. I truly, truly believe that. So there will also be other events that are going to come up over time. I've got dreams and ideas and all that. And so this is just kind of an invitation for you to kind of think about and consider for everybody. Are you wanting to participate in serving on a Sunday? Are you wanting to participate in helping with an event? Are you wanting to kind of just get to know the kids and kind of meet them on a Sunday morning? Participate. I would love it. Some things, so the mention of the creative arts title staff role. Yes, that thing. Has also kind of come up in my mind of how cool it would be, because I know we have so many amazing artists in like musical artists, actual like drawing, painting artists. So just so many things that I've kind of like envisioned. How can we bring the arts culture of our church and blend it with our kids? We have talented kids here too. And so how can we come together and kind of blend the two a little bit? There's going to be events that, I'd love to put together with artists where they can, read a Bible verse with the kids or something, and then they paint a picture about the verse, or they write a song or lyrics or a poem or something, like just different expressions of our faith. So it'd be fun to have events with like artists or athletes or people who just want to hang out with kids and play board games, people who like to puzzle, the people who love to watch movies. Like we do movie nights as adults. How cool would it be to do a movie night with the kids? Yeah. People who love to craft, like how can we just blend a lot of that a little bit more together? So I'd like you to also consider, what skills do you have to share with kids that we could kind of put something together? The other part of that / is friendship. And I have this vision of it. So using that information of the one caring adult in their life. So we can think about it like a mentorship program, but I'm going to prefer to call it a friendship program, because what I think it looks like is more of more like an adult committing to becoming a friend with a youth, with a preteen, a teen. And it would be something where, you can hang out with them once a month or however often. You can show up to their sporting events or their performances or anything like that. You could be a person for them to talk to and talk with outside of mom and dad. So my hope is that it would be something that we would start with kids who are at about 11 years old. As long as like the parent and the child are ready, it would be something that's kind of like they agree, like, yes, we want to participate in this. And it would be something like, if you think about for the kid, it would be a person where if the kid's like, when something amazing happens in my life, who do I want to tell? And that you would get to be that person that they would want to tell. Kids are likely to remember an adult who knew them, like truly, truly knew them, more than they are like a lesson that they learned, a prayer that they said that led them to Christ. I don't remember what I said when I became a believer, and things like that. So it's more about the relational aspect and how they see Jesus displayed. So that's something that's coming as well. So I would love for everybody to kind of think about that and consider that as well. Lastly, parent discipleship. Can I get an amen? This is something where, like Christopher and I were in a conversation recently, and it just kind of became clear. Growing up, I had a lot of amazing people in my life, but I didn't have a person that I felt like discipled me really well. And it was kind of similar for him. And so then as we kind of came together, I realized, like, as we are trying to disciple our children in our home, neither of us were discipled well individually. And so now we're trying to, like, make it up as we go kind of thing. Not really, but like we don't have that experience of what that looked like to pull from. So we're kind of trying to do that a lot ourselves. And sometimes it's very inconsistent and sometimes it's great. And so what I'm looking at is the reality that parents need to be discipled. The average number of hours, this is another quote from a book I'm reading, the average number of hours per year that a church has to influence a child is 40. Now, if a child participates in Sunday school and youth group weekly, which we don't currently have a youth group, with perfect attendance every week for the year, the number could jump as high as 100, but the average is 40. And parents, on the other hand, have an average of 3,000 hours per year with which to influence their kids. So the reality is, yes, it is so important to show up here on a Sunday morning and to serve our kids and to love our kids and be present. But in reality, it's the parents who are doing that the rest of the week. And we need help sometimes. And so my hope is that we would kind of develop a new rhythm where there's some parent and family discipleship opportunities. And so right now, what it's looking like would be, I'm starting with classes for parents probably twice a year to expand and deepen their relationships and their understanding of how to disciple their family. But I hope what that would also look like in the future is people that are further down the road than us as parents would have people who are discipling us as well and participating in this experience with the families. So that's kind of where we're there's a lot that I'm thinking about. So those are kind of the basics. So what I want to leave you guys with is just the reminder that these kids are part of the future of the church. They need people like us from all different stages of life and circumstances to be encouraged by and shown God's love and truth. And I've for the longest time, I've had such a strong desire for our kids, and so also then for all the other kids, to encounter Jesus in practical ways, to have a space to wonder and ask questions, to be discipled by people, not only in their home, but also outside. So I'd love to invite anybody here. If you're willing to engage with kids here at church, if you're willing to come alongside parents, if you're willing to build a friendship with a preteen, join a serving rotation, or participate in any of the special events that come up along the way, I would love to just invite you to join, to be curious, ask me questions, see what we can do to partner together, to use your gifts to bless them so that they will also bless you as well. So thank you for listening. This is not the last you'll hear from me.
All right. Hi, friends. I get to tell you a little bit about the residency. We're going to kind of breeze through this, but if you don't know much about the residency or what it is a 2-year program designed to see growth in 4 key areas, which are subsequently the areas that Eco Presbyterian, our denomination that we belong to, emphasizes through the ordination track. So if you want to get ordained as a pastor with Eco, these are the 4 areas that they address and help you on through the ordination track. So we have built that into our own residency program so that it mirrors where I will likely be headed. So in these 4 areas of emotional and spiritual health, proficiency in ministry, leadership skills, and biblical and theological integration, so just being able to understand authorial intent in Scripture and apply it to your own life. We have designed our residency program with these things in mind, so you can see this is what our first quarter looked like. So if you've ever wondered to yourself, what is Daniel up to? He's kind of a strange guy, and we're not sure he's working very hard. Now you have the answer. I am a strange guy, but I have been doing a lot of work, so here we are. I have a meeting with Clint once a week where we go through some of this stuff, particularly in the books that we consume. We've already read like 5 books together. It's been wonderful. And I have felt very invested into and developed as a result of these things. And I've also had the opportunity to take on a lot of different responsibilities around the church, which you have likely seen if you've been around. I've had the opportunity to preach. I've had the opportunity to serve in pretty much every capacity that the church offers. I've been able to plan some events, do lots of things like what a pastor would do. And I am very grateful to have had that opportunity, because I think a lot of people step into residencies or programs where they expect that they're going to be developed really heavily and taught a lot of things, and then they don't end up ever actually being given any authority to do anything. And you sort of sit there for 2 years and you hope that you have opportunities to grow, and they don't ever actually materialize. So I can confidently say that has not been the case with Midtown, and I have felt extremely invested into and developed, even just in the last 5 months of how much I've been able to grow and feel more equipped to pastor someday has been very significant. So I'm super grateful for that. If you go to the next slide, here's also what we've been going through in quarter 2. So you'll see a little bit of a progression. I won't bore you with all of the details of every little thing that we've been doing, but there's a clear plan. It's super outlined and thought out. I'm really benefiting from that Clint is quite the planner and organizer. And I want to take just a minute as I wrap up to express my gratitude to each of you for how you have received me stepping into this role. I have felt a tremendous amount of care from our community, and people have been so affirming of certain gifts that they see, or just encouraging me when maybe things are a little bit overwhelming or challenging. All of this on top of I'm also full-time in seminary getting a master's in biblical and theological studies. My time is a little bit pressed, and sometimes I don't always have the opportunity to plan as much as I would like to for certain things, and I've seen a lot of people come alongside me, pick up some of the slack, and just encourage positive things that they've seen in me. So that really means a lot to me. I have definitely benefited from this role. It's been so much fun. If you can't tell, I love my job, and it is just a blast to be with you all on Sundays and beyond. I am currently getting ready to submit my ordination application, so I'll have that done by the end of June. We'll enter into the ordination track with Eco Presbyterian, attend my first retreat in November, and start the process of becoming an ordained pastor, which is at the end of the residency, the goal would be to be ordained and then to be planting a church either somewhere in the Metro Phoenix area or otherwise, and recreating a space similar to Midtown, because I love the ethos of Midtown. I love the heartbeat of Midtown, all the values and things that we've talked about and that I would love to create more spaces like that, because I think there's such a tremendous need for it and for young people to step in and help fill the gap. So it's a little bit of what's going on with me. If you have more questions about the residency, put them in the thing, and I'd be happy to get roasted and answer your questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel. All right, one last slide, and then I want to jump through your guys' questions. I've been reading them. Great questions, and we'll be able to cruise through them quickly. Ministry team updates. So if you aren't familiar with how we do ministry teams, we do it in a trimester schedule. So spring, summer, and fall, we have people sign up for 15-week portions throughout the year with the idea of saying, hey, for this 15 weeks, I can commit to serving in this way, in this capacity, this much time. So you can sign up for our ministry teams. They include things like Kid Town. They include things like leading on prayer, announcements, those sorts of spaces, leading in setup, behind the scenes, all of that stuff. You can scan, guess what? A QR code. Come on now. You can scan that QR code and sign up for ministry team there. Here are our immediate needs. We need 2 more folks serving once a month on setup and teardown, 1 more person serving once a month on slides, and 7 more people serving once a month in Kid Town. If we got all of those, that would be awesome. So that's opportunities to connect and jump in. That is all we've got on the slides, and now I want to go through your questions. So those of you that submitted questions, I'm just going to read them out loud and answer these questions quickly. Ashley, technically not a question, a comment, an exclamatory, I love the idea of church at Aimright and more youth ministry options. We do too, Ashley, thanks. Would we still partner? This is another question from Ashley. Would we still partner with Hope Women's Center if we moved to another location? Yes. You'll notice in the mission budget, and this helps answer one of Tom's questions later, HWC is part of our mission budget. That's Hope Women's Center. So our hope is that some of our money is going towards them. We also hope to do events with them, sort of like how we do events with Aimright now. So opportunities maybe once a month or once every few months, serving in a family night, those sorts of things. So we definitely hope to still invest in Hope Women's Center if we move. Britt asked, is rent, which is given either to Hope or potentially a different nonprofit, considered part of the 10% mission budget? This is a good question that was answered, but I'll answer it for everybody here as well. Our mission budget is not something that we strictly benefit from. So our rent, while I would call it missional, and that it is supporting an organization that is doing work throughout the week, the rent is not part of our mission budget. So we have 10% of our funding in addition to rent. So if you want to think about where our money's going, it's a good chunk of it going outside of our walls between rent and mission, but we want to make sure that mission remains 10% of our giving that we do not strictly benefit from directly. Daniela asked, in regards to mission, would Midtown be open to international mission trips in the future? Definitely. We currently support a missionary in Edinburgh, Scotland. Caleb Shockley is his name. Yep, many people know Caleb in summer. They have been working on planting a church in Edinburgh, which is one of the most unchurched places in the world. Fewer than 2% of people in Edinburgh would call themselves Christian. So it's functionally an unreached people group in Europe. So we support them there. We have been in loose conversations about potentially sending people there. We also have Mexico mission trips available throughout the year in partnership with a couple other Presbyterian churches here. So that's kind of where we started, but we're certainly open to expanding that as well as missional opportunities pop up. Keck, I'm assuming that's Chris Keck. How would we, there's multiple Kecks here. Who the Keck is that? How would we review a report showing the current fiscal year's budget and actual financials? So that was answered by Andrew, I believe. So you can review that report, by the way, in your email. We emailed out the fiscal report to you all. Ashley, back on the board with an upvote on this one. Is the discipleship group only for 9 months and you're done? Or is it something that you were involved in long-term like a small group? The design of the group is to be 9 months long, and then at the end of that group, those people are becoming leaders of new groups and helping disciple others. So the hope is that it would be exponentially expanding, and that each person in that group is leading either a community group or a discipleship group in the future. Does that help? Answer? So it's more like a leadership development program? Yeah, I would say not for ministry leadership, just for deep discipleship. So I would say it's really like, how do I build rhythms in my life that help me follow Jesus more deeply for 9 months? How do I build those in for 9 months that they can be sustained and that I can help lead others in the future? So another question on that, should I put it in? Can I just ask it now? You can ask it now, yeah. So is there a long-term space for people who want spiritual, biblical community? So the idea is that discipleship fellowship would meet that need, and that those people would then become leaders who would lead others. So you're still in a discipleship fellowship. You just move from being a part of it to being a leader of one in the future. And then those leaders will have regular meetings with our staff. So I lead our community group leaders and our discipleship group leaders every couple months in trainings and connection. So those will be kind of continued leadership development in that way. Yeah, cool. Next up. What is a benevolence fund? And this is connected, I think, to Keck's question, MTP's emergency fund. Are those the same or are those different? When you say MTP emergency fund. Oh, got it. Right. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so the idea behind that is 3 months of operating cost is what we hope to have saved up. We currently have that in addition to other designated funds, but we currently have that amount. That was a big thing for us when we were chartering on the emergency end. Do we have enough to sustain if everything stopped for a stretch? And we would for 3 months. That's 90 days has kind of been the rhythm for us. So. On the benevolence fund, great question, Jason. A benevolence fund is a fund that churches put together to specifically provide emergency needs, is why I thought emergency, or specific needs for people within our community or around our community that need help, covering rent, need a car payment, lost a tire, whatever the things are, right? So our board is currently developing an application process for this and is trying to allocate, okay, what does it look like for us to sustain a fund like that? How do we want it? So we're basically in the process of building it. We don't currently have it, but we've had situations come up in the past where it's just been awesome that our community has met immediate needs for people when they've needed them. We'd like that to be a little more built into the infrastructure, so we have a process for it in the future. Does that help? Cool. That's benevolence fund. Would there be a rent difference with Aimright? There would be. It would not be a huge one. So this is actually reflected in the budget. If you go through the budget, we, on the second half of the year, put in an anticipatory increase in our rent cost, thinking that we could move. That also could be the case because Hope may also increase our rent. They've increased our rent in the past, not by any exorbitant amounts, but they have. The rent cost change that would happen if we move to a space like Aimright, again, I say if because that's not lined up at all, it would be about $300 a month, but we would be expanding in a variety of ways. So it would be a really, I think, great usage of our funds. But yeah, there would be a bit of an increase, hence the point on Covenant Partners continuing to increase giving. That's right, we get a basketball court. I'd say that's worth $300 a month. That's right. All right, Tom, for fiscal year 24, I think that's 24-25, I am confused by the net income. So yeah, if you could, Daniel, go back to our fiscal year. This is a good question, Tom. I can see where this is confusing. So the 20623 number includes our residency funding, which is designated funding for our resident. That is not part of our operating budget, and it is not part of our income that we are building our budget off of, because that money is strictly designated for our resident. That money is grant funding and outside funding from other churches specifically for leadership development. So our operating contributions for this next year, we hope are 175. Does that help answer, Tom? Yeah. So that's the designated fund. It's a good question there. Our resident here at Midtown is paid partially through our staff budget. So we're hoping to build that up over the next couple years, partially through our staff budget and then partially through those designated funds on our residency. Let's see, plans for annual independent financial review, another good question. So annual independent financial review, this is something that we have to do as part of our polity within ECO. As of right now, we actually share financial services with Mountain View Presbyterian. So our financial review has been tucked into their financial review. So they do an annual financial review that includes our budget, and then we share that financial review with them. Our hope is in the next fiscal year, we will be moving out of some of those financial controls for Mountain View and taking over some financial controls ourselves. That will mean having a different accountant. That will mean having some other systems that are built for us. At that point, our board would evaluate our own annual financial review. As of right now, since we're paying for those financial services through them, it's included in their annual financial review. Does that help, Tom? Cool. Next question from Tom. In the mission giving, what is Hope Women's Center and what is PRM? Hope Women's Center is, HWC is Hope Women's Center. Community House is actually the nonprofit committed to helping neighbors experiencing homelessness in South Scottsdale. That is a nonprofit that is run by our former elder here at Midtown, Jackie Parks, who we have helped commission out to plant a church in South Scottsdale. So that's Community House. PRM is Phoenix Rescue Mission. So they do a variety of work for neighbors experiencing homelessness in Central Phoenix. So that's who those are. With the Shockleys increase of expenses of $4,200 this year, would the session consider increasing support over the budgeted $2,000? That's certainly something that our board could chat about. $2,000 is more than we had been giving. So it's actually, I think, 400 more, 200 more. I need to look at what we gave this last year. But yes, that's certainly something we can consider. Board members in the room at our next meeting will kind of keep that in mind. And that mission funding basically is like, where do we want to land? at the end of the year, we are open to other opportunities, right? So if there's a ministry that makes a lot of sense for us to invest in that we learn about in our immediate neighborhood, we're open to adjusting those. So those are more suggested based upon the current ministries we support and partner with. That is all of the questions. I told you I'd speed through them. That was like 1.5 podcast speed, baby. Any other questions that come to mind for you guys before we wrap up? Yes, Tom. Yeah. Totally. Yep. It's great. No, that's a good thought and connects well with Daniela's question about sending mission trips and those sorts of things too. So thanks, Tom. That's good to consider, and our board will keep it in mind. Other thoughts, comments, rebuttals, angry diatribes? They can be human need based. It's up to our board to decide. So like in a humanitarian situation, right, it might be like, well, we just want to send money to the Middle East or to the Ukraine like we've seen over the last couple of years. So we're not opposed to that, but we would want to deeply consider what that looks like. Yeah. Feeling good? You guys have sat for a long time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for getting lunch with us. Friends, have a great rest of your week. Take some of the cookies and drinks and the rest, and we will see you guys soon.